Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Today we will talk about some topics that are important to think of now that you have received your admission results to the University of Gothenburg. So first of all, to all of you that have been admitted to the university, congratulations. We are very excited for you, and we want to make sure to help you along your journey from being admitted to starting your studies here in Gothenburg later this year for the autumn semester. So for today's webinar, we'll start with a presentation, and during the second half of the webinar there will also be a panel with our international student ambassadors and a Q&A session during which you can ask your questions. We also have staff from the university, Ida, John and Paul, with us today, who will be addressing your questions via the Q&A chat. You can basically submit questions anytime, but please have in mind that maybe some of the information we will present during the presentation, maybe they will answer some of your questions. So we kindly request to just wait with questions until the end of our presentation and until we start the student panel. And also good to know that all questions will be taken in written form through the Q&A chat, so you don't need to digitally raise your hand or ask for permission to speak or anything like that. So just submit your question in the Q&A chat. So let's get started. Once again, congratulations on your admission and welcome to the University of Gothenburg, which we also often abbreviate as GU. As students of one of our 10 international bachelor programs and more than 80 international master programs, you will be joining around 58,000 students that currently study at the university today. And we are very happy to welcome you today, and we are sure that you will enjoy your time and studies here in Gothenburg when the autumn semester has come. And here are 4 reasons why we believe that you have made absolutely the right choice by applying to the University of Gothenburg. One is that at GU you will receive high quality education. The University of Gothenburg is one of Sweden's top ranked universities and conducts world-class research that's characterized by multidisciplinary collaboration, and you will certainly notice that when studying one of our international master and bachelor programs. At GU, we also highly value freedom, and I know freedom is a very big word, but openness, academic freedom, diversity, and equality are very important to us, and here you are encouraged to be who you are, say what you think, and in our classrooms, lectures, and seminars, we welcome debate and new perspectives that help educate, research, and society to progress. Another thing that's really important to us is sustainability. The university has been at the forefront of sustainability standards since the early 2000s, and the city of Gothenburg itself has been ranked the world's most sustainable destination 7 times over the past decade by the Global Destination Sustainability Index. And Gothenburg was also appointed as a sustainable lifestyle hub by the United Nations Fashion and Lifestyle Network at their 2025 summit. So sustainability is a core part of who we are, and that's something you will also for sure notice when you start your studies later this year. And we also value a healthy study-life balance, and our study climate provides for a rich life beyond studying as well. And last but not least, we care about your future. We believe that your ambition can take you really far, and that in an environment based on free thinking and encouragement, we know that you can go even further. So from collaborations with local and global companies to doctoral studies and our worldwide alumni network, our goal is to provide you not just with an outstanding education, but also with a strong foundation for what comes after. So after this little greeting, let's take a look at what topics we will be talking about today. First and foremost, I'd like to emphasize that today's big topic, you can see here at the beginning, paying tuition fees and applying for a residence permit are only relevant for those of you that are fee-paying students and those of you that are required to apply for a residence permit in order to come to Sweden. For some of you, for example, if you are a citizen from the European Union, much of the following information does not apply, but we'll also cover other practical information, such as living costs, upcoming events and resources that you can use while preparing for your future studies at GU. And we'll also show you a way that you can already now start getting to know your future classmates already. So stay tuned for that. And then in the second half of our webinar, we'll have our student panel with our international student ambassadors, and you'll get to ask your questions in the Q&A. So if we talk about tuition fees, if you are a fee-paying international student, you must pay tuition fees before you start your studies at the University of Gothenburg. And along with your notification of selection results, aka your admission, you have also received information about paying your tuition fees if you are a fee-paying student. And you can also see here what is included in your tuition fees. Your tuition fees cover full-time studies at the University of Gothenburg, which is equivalent to 60 credits per academic year and 30 credits per semester. And as fee-paying students, you are also automatically covered by FAS Plus insurance. And your tuition fee also includes access to campus facilities such as libraries, computer labs, other study facilities, as well as different types of student services such as study and career counseling, student health care, disability services, and other study administration services. And yeah, together with your admission results, you have received information about how to proceed with your tuition fee payment. You can make the payment via bank transfer or by card, Visa or MasterCard. And the last day to pay your first tuition fee installment for the autumn semester 2026 is the 1st of May 2026. So you need to pay your tuition fee in order to secure your admissions offer and then be able to proceed with your residence permit application. And some things that are good to know when you are paying your tuition fees are the following. If you are applying for a residence permit, wait until the university has administered your payment before you go ahead with your application for a residence permit in order to avoid possible delays. Also, if you already know that you won't be able to meet the requirements for a residence permit, please don't pay the tuition fee, as you won't be able to study without a residence permit. And there is also a general administrative fee that is charged for granted tuition fee refunds, which amounts to 5,000 to 9,000 Swedish crowns. And also, please start planning already for future tuition fee payments. And don't rely on earning funds to cover tuition fees while you're in Sweden. So we encourage you to start planning ahead already. And you can find detailed information about tuition fees on gu.se, which is our website, or as previously mentioned in your email inbox. And you are welcome to submit any questions you have about the tuition fee payments in our Q&A. So let's move on to the second big topic of this webinar, and that is the application process for a residence permit. So generally, if you plan to stay in Sweden for studies for more than 3 months, you need to apply for a residence permit for studies. You apply for a residence permit through the Swedish migration agency, which is called Migrationsverket. And basically, the fastest way to apply and to get a result is to apply online. When you apply for a residence permit for studies, you must show that you have sufficient financial support for the time period that you're applying for. And the Swedish Migration Agency has a living expense requirement that you will need to meet. And for applications submitted now in 2026, that is at least 10,656 Swedish crowns per month. and you can be granted a residence permit for studies for 1 year or for 2 years. If you apply for a residence permit for 1 year, you must apply for an extension for the second year of your studies before your current residence permit expires. And if you apply for a residence permit for 2 years, be aware that you will need to demonstrate that you have the sufficient funds for the entirety of the permit period. So for your residence permit application, what's good to know is that if your family is accompanying you to Sweden, you can apply for residence permits for them as well. Here again, we just want to emphasize that it's important that you make sure your application is complete when you submit it in order to avoid any unnecessary delays. And that of course applies for anyone applying for a residence permit. And if you are a EU or EEA citizen, you can reside and study in Sweden without a residence permit, but you will need to register with the Swedish tax agency upon your move. But that is something that can be done with much shorter notice. And something that we also want to specifically highlight now during this webinar is that the Swedish government is currently reviewing the rules for residence permits for higher education. And these new rules are due to be implemented on or around 11th of June 2026 and will apply to your residence permit if you are granted one. And the changes that are proposed are the requirements to make acceptable progress in your studies are increased, as well as limitations in the right to work and limitations in the ability to change permit categories until your studies have been completed. These changes do not affect the current application process to obtain a residence permit for higher education. This is to inform you that these changes will apply during your studies and if you need to apply for an extension of the permit. And detailed information about this will be available on the Swedish Migration Agency's website once the changes come into force in June. The University of Gothenburg can only answer general questions about residence permits through our tuition fee team. Unfortunately, we won't be able to help with detailed personal cases. And as we said, the Swedish Migration Agency is the authority responsible for issuing residence permits, so you can find detailed information and instructions on their webpage. And they will also be the primary source of information regarding the upcoming changes in regulations in regards to residence permits for studies. So now that we've talked about that, we can also talk about some other topics that we want to make sure that you take into consideration now that you are preparing your next steps after admission. One is to take a look at how much in general life costs in Sweden. So we'll walk you through an average estimation of living costs in Gothenburg and also the situation regarding working during your studies and what other kind of resources we'll provide you with so that you can prepare for your future studies here in Gothenburg. In terms of cost of living, of course, this is only an estimation and we can only talk about living costs on a fairly general level as it depends a lot on each individual, housing opportunities, your lifestyle, or simply the way you spend your money. But we compiled an overview of how much it might cost to live in Gothenburg. So if we look at accommodation, this generally can vary quite a lot, but usually it should be between 4,000 and 10,000 Swedish crowns, depending on whether you rent shared accommodation or you rent your own accommodation. Telephone and internet costs can vary as well. So here you could count on at least, let's say, 400 Swedish crowns, and around 3,000 to 4,000 Swedish crowns can be estimated for food. But of course, this depends a lot on your personal preferences and habits, and perhaps how good you are at meal prep. And with the student ticket, you can also get public transportation for 645 Swedish crowns a month. and clothing, leisure, insurance, care, or any other expenses similar to that might amount to at least 2,500 a month. But again, this depends a lot on your individual circumstances, but in total, as an estimate, we suggest a monthly budget of around 11,000 to 17,000 Swedish crowns. As said before, this really depends a lot on your own individual lifestyle and your ways of spending and budgeting, as well as on accommodation. As a student, you can also work alongside your studies without having to apply for a separate work permit. If you have received a residence permit for studies, you also have the right to work in Sweden during the time period of your residence permit. And students from the EU or EEA can, of course, also work during their studies in Sweden. But something that you, of course, need to have in mind is that you are primarily moving to Sweden to study. So going to class, working on assignments, passing your courses, that is expected to be your focus during your studies. And throughout the semesters, it's actually also quite common that your course schedules change. They're not always the same, and different courses can have quite different course schedules. So that's also important to consider. And so as we have said before, we would like to emphasize that you should financially plan ahead now, also for the second year of your studies, and not rely on finding a job in Gothenburg to finance future tuition fee payments. And as we mentioned, there are changes in regulations for residence permits for higher education that are due to be implemented in June, which means that there will very likely be limitations in the right to work. So it's important that you pay close attention to the information provided by the Swedish Migration Agency later in June. And we know, of course, that apart from everything we've talked about right now, there's so much more to planning and preparing for your move to Sweden and preparing for your future studies. So we will continue to provide you with information throughout the next weeks and months. On our website, for example, we have a pre-arrival checklist as well as extensive pre-arrival information. And we have also sent out our first pre-arrival letters to you last week with lots of information to consider now after your admission. And you will also receive links to all of these materials after this webinar as well. And if you haven't received any pre-arrival letters yet, you will also be able to sign up for them there. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with upcoming events and activities, or just want to know more about what studying in Gothenburg actually looks like, you can take a look and follow us on social media. You can follow us on our Chinese social media on WeChat, Weibo, or RedNote through scanning the QR codes. Or you can also follow our international student ambassadors on Instagram at student.gu. That's the account handle that you can see here. And in your first pre-arrival letter, you have also received an invitation to join Goin, which is the University of Gothenburg's very own social community. You can download Goin, the app, and basically find out who else is going to study at the University of Gothenburg later this year. So you can basically, you can meet students with shared interests and hobbies, future classmates from your study program. You can also reach out to fellow students from your home country and join lots of different groups to help you prepare for your studies, or to just find like-minded people with similar interests, and get ready for your studies before even setting foot on campus. And you can also ask questions in our Ask a Student Ambassador group on Goin, where our student ambassadors will do their best to answer anything you'd like to know about student life in Sweden. So you have received an invitation to join Goin last Thursday through our first pre-arrival letter, as well as through a separate invitation that was sent out earlier today, actually. So if you haven't received any of these, or if you haven't checked your email inbox, make sure to do so. Otherwise, you'll be able to sign up for our pre-arrival newsletters and for Goin in the follow-up to this webinar. We also have planned a couple more events and webinars that you can join during the upcoming weeks, such as next week on 16th of April, our housing webinar, where we will tell you more about finding a place to live in Gothenburg, and where we will also hear from our current students what kind of tips they have for finding housing, or what accommodation they are living in, and where they will be sharing their housing journey in Gothenburg. Then on 23rd of April, we will also have our drop-in sessions during which you can join and chat with our international students and our staff regarding basically any kinds of questions you have, whether it's more of administrative nature, for example, regarding paying your tuition fees, or something student life related. You are free to drop in anytime during those sessions and ask questions. Then on 6th of May, we'll have another webinar where we will talk about all relevant things that you need to know about your move to Sweden and to Gothenburg, from classroom culture in Sweden to weather, getting around the city, student life, up to our welcome program in August, and much more. And then to finish off on 13th of May, we'll have another 2 more drop-in sessions that you can join to ask questions. So all times here are displayed in Central European Summertime, and you will find links to register on our website, on Goin, on our social media, as well as on our follow-up email to this webinar. So that will definitely be hard to miss. So we hope to see you as well at our upcoming events throughout the next weeks and months. So just before heading into our student panel and Q&A section of this webinar, we want to address some of the questions that we receive quite regularly. So perhaps this might also answer some of the questions that you might have had. So for example, where can I find my official admission letter? Your notification of selection results is available online at universityadmissions.se as a printable PDF file, and the printout serves as the official document and should be used when you need to present an official copy of your selection results. Regarding tuition fee payments, when is my tuition fee payment considered to be on time? We consider your tuition fee installment to be paid on time if the bank transaction is made before the deadline, which we said earlier was the 1st of May 2026. Where can I find up-to-date exchange rates? The university can only provide costs in Swedish crowns, so please use a currency converter or contact your local bank to find up-to-date exchange rates, and the tuition fee team will inform you if your payment is not complete, and you will then receive payment instructions for the remaining part of the tuition fee. Can you get a payment plan for paying tuition fees? And the answer is no, you cannot get a payment plan for tuition fees. Tuition fees for each semester must be paid in advance. And can you pay the tuition fee in more than one transaction? Yes, you can. You can pay the tuition fee through several card and or bank transactions, as long as these take place close together and the full amount is paid by the due date. And we recommend limiting the number of transactions to a maximum of 5, and each payment shall state the applicable payment reference number. And then also, can the University of Gothenburg contact the Swedish Migration Agency to help with your residence permit application process? No, we cannot do this. The University of Gothenburg can't influence the application process. Therefore, we also cannot provide support in individual cases regarding residence permit applications, but we can provide general guidance. So if you have any questions regarding your application, once you have applied for a residence permit for studies, we recommend that you always contact the Swedish Migration Agency directly. Let's head straight into our student panel then, and also our Q&A. So I see that some people have already started submitting questions. So feel free to submit any question that you might have in the Q&A chat. We've got our university staff available to answer your questions in the Q&A chat. And we've also got 3 of our international student ambassadors who can tell you more about what it's actually like to study at the University of Gothenburg and to live in Sweden. So let's let them introduce themselves. We can start with Ark.
Yeah. Hi everyone, congratulations for getting into GU. Good job, well done. It's very exciting to live in Sweden and experience the Swedish culture. Yeah, my name is Ark. I'm a first year student in environmental science. I'm from Mumbai. Yeah.
Yes, then we also have Shay with us.
Hey everyone, welcome to GU. And my name is Shay. I'm in my second year of my Master's Public Health. I'm from South Africa. And we'll probably get to know each other a little bit more in the next few minutes.
Yes, and we also have Heimanot with us.
Hi everyone, congratulations again. My name is Heimanot and I'm from Italy and I'm studying my master's in embedded design second year, and really nice to meet you.
All right, we've got students here from all over the world coming to Gothenburg for the autumn semester. So there are lots of things that might be different from what you're used to, and that can be more in terms of academics or just student life or just simply settling into a new country. So if we look at it first from an academic perspective, or if we look at the academic experience of what it's like to study in Sweden, perhaps Shay, we can begin with you. How has it been for you? How has studying in Sweden been different from your home country or the country that you have studied before you came to Sweden?
Yeah, so I studied in the US for my bachelor's. I don't have much experience from South Africa, and from the perspective of a US bachelor program, you very much get lectured at. So you arrive to your lecture and you sit and listen and take notes, and then you leave. But my experience in Sweden has very much been the opposite. I think they call it a flipped classroom method, where you are expected to read some type of material and be prepared before you come into the classroom. And then you have group discussions where you might be broken up into groups during the class or beforehand, and to cover the material. And then you come together towards the end with the professor to have a cohesive discussion. Towards the end, you also will be doing a lot more group work. It could be group writing assignments or group presentations or just group discussions, and seminars where you get graded on your participation and attendance. Preparing a discussion beforehand and coming to the seminar and having you and your group work together, the professor walking around the classroom.
All right, so you mentioned already like the classes are quite interactive. So lots of group work, lots of discussions. How would you describe sort of the relationship between the professors and the teacher and the dynamic between professors and teachers?
Yeah, so this was also new to me when I came to Sweden. I was very much used to saying Dr. So-and-so in my bachelor's. But in Sweden, there is very low hierarchical relationships. So professors don't really go by their title. And you refer to them by their first name, and they will introduce themselves to you as their first name. And the relationship is very equal, I would say, where the students' say or opinion or expertise is almost as equal as the professor's expertise. And in my program, we're very international. We're about 70% international, and we also have very varying backgrounds where some people are doctors themselves and come and do a public health degree, or people coming only from the bachelor level. So the voice of the student is actually important for the learning experience and enriching the learning experience, where they actually want you to say what you know and use what you know to help build on the classroom experience. Yeah.
All right. And for you in your program, as an example, what does a typical study week for you, what does it look like?
So a typical study week would be a mix of self-study with maybe 3 days of being in the classroom, where it would be almost all day. Between 9 and 3 p.m., you can pretty much consider yourself in the classroom, and about 3 times a week, with maybe on a Wednesday, you have a self-study day at home when you're expected to read the material. And I would say that more often than not, you are busy 5 days out of the week and have the weekends off.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your experience in that regard. So we can basically summarize that. I mean, for you and for many other of our students, I think a common experience is that when you come to Sweden, it might be new, sort of like that you have this very like low hierarchy classroom, low hierarchy level relationship with your professor and teacher, like you're on first name basis with your professor, lots of group work, lots of discussions, lots of encouragement to also not just listen and take in what the teacher has to say, but to like contribute in an environment of students, teachers interacting with each other. So then also academics aside, apart from starting new studies in Gothenburg, I mean, you're essentially also starting a new life in Sweden, which of course is like a really, really big thing. So in terms of like student life, living in Gothenburg, ARC, maybe you can talk a bit more about that. Like, how has it been like for you? Like, for example, what do you like most about living in Gothenburg? How was it arriving? How did you make friends?
Yeah. So I think my favorite part about living in Gothenburg is the lagom lifestyle. When you come to Sweden, you'll come across this word. It kind of means like having a good balance. So I would definitely say that living here, like the work-life balance is really very equal. Like Shay said, you work throughout the week at uni, but then you have the weekends off and you spend it with your friends. So that's probably like my favorite part about living here. Yeah, and also because I do an environmental science course, sustainability is a big part of the course, of course. And Matthias has said, how Gothenburg is one of the most sustainable cities in the world. It's definitely true. It's one of the reasons I decided to come here, because just like living everyday life is learning. You learn so much. So there's definitely a lot I learned outside the classroom just by living in Sweden about sustainability, about my course. The way I made my first friends was in class. I did try at the welcome hangout, but I think I was a bit too shy then. But then when I got to class, everyone was so welcoming and friendly. Like people just came up and spoke to me. So if you are shy, don't worry. Like everyone's in the same place as you. Everyone's like starting off just like you. You're going to find so many people who want to be friends with you. So just be open to them, and you'll find your people.
And what yeah, how would you, or what's been your impression of student life in Gothenburg, maybe perhaps compared to where you've studied before, like how international it is, what kinds of people are coming to Sweden, or who you will be studying with in class?
Well, it's quite different from my bachelor's because I did my bachelor's from the UK. I didn't meet so many EU students. I don't know why. So it was very super international in terms of meeting different people from the EU and just like learning about their culture has been really nice. Um, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. And what have you felt maybe something that people might not have on their radar or that they should be prepared for, like whether that's weather, living costs, or culture? You already mentioned like lagom, it's like sort of like Swedish principle.
Oh yeah, it's good you reminded me about that because I think the weather is something you definitely have to prepare for before you come to Sweden. For example, we had a storm 2 days ago, and today it's just so beautiful. So I would say definitely pack waterproof hiking boots. That's what you need. You can use it in the rain, you can use it in the snow. Yeah, the weather was one thing that took me by surprise. Um, the cost of living was another thing I was really worried about. It's something you hear a lot from people before you come to Sweden. Um, and I was really worried about it. But when I came here, I realized it just sort of depends on you as a person. And if you budget, you will be completely fine. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and that's also something that we will talk a lot more about either in our Zoom sessions that we've got coming up or in our webinar on 6th of May, where we go a little bit more in depth in regards to, yeah, like what's the weather really like? What is it like to like, yeah, live here as a student in terms of budget and all this kind of things. So that's something that sometimes very often, yeah, some people say, oh, the weather, how are you going to manage? But like, it's gonna be fine. It's not that bad. But it's like very interesting, like to have, live in a place where you have like long days in summer, short days in winter, perhaps even at times lots of snow in winter, lots of sunshine in the summer. So has some nice ups and downs throughout the year. So, I mean, as I mentioned, yeah, through the next months, we'll provide you with lots of information throughout our website, throughout webinars about preparing for your studies. And right before the start of the semester, we'll also hold our welcome program for all new students. But of course, it takes a lot of things to prepare for arriving to a new country. So, Heimanot, you have actually lived in Sweden for quite some time. Maybe you can actually talk a bit about that as well. But maybe you can also say, like, I don't know, what has it been like for you? What surprised you when you came to Sweden? Are there things that you think that people should sort of like think about before they arrive? Anything that might make things easier?
Yeah, I've done my bachelor and now I'm doing my master, so it's been almost 5 years. And as I said, I'm from Italy, and I think Italy and Sweden are very different on a lot of things. And something that I noticed when I moved to Sweden is that public transportation works pretty well. And even though I have a driver's license, I don't feel the need to drive here in Gothenburg. I feel like there's always a tram or a bus that can, or even a train that can bring me anywhere I need to go. So I think it's really nice, especially when you're a student and maybe you don't have a car, or if you don't have a driver's license, to not feel the need to get those things. And I think that has made my life here very easy, and also I would say cheaper, because then with the tram, with the bus and transportation ticket, you can take the bus, you can take the tram, but you can also take the boats to visit the islands. So I feel like I really like that about Gothenburg. And I think that, of course, the weather was also a big difference. But I think for example, we don't get that much snow back home in Italy, where I'm from, anymore. So it was nice to actually see the changes like of seasons, and you really get each season. You get the autumn, and you get the real winter, and you enjoy the spring, and then summer is just beautiful. So I think it's really nice to get to experience that, because it's not that common anymore. So those things really surprise me.
Yeah, all right. Was there also anything that you felt like, oh, that's been really easy adapting, maybe even easier than you expected? Anything where you really felt like, oh, it's been pretty easy getting into Swedish society or studying in Sweden?
I think that the university environment, it was very easy to feel very welcomed, and as Shay was talking about, the lack of like hierarchy when it comes to relationships with your teachers, I think that made it much easier to be able to share with them your progress, like academically, and ask for help or support. And I think it helped to foster a more understanding environment also with the classmates. So I think integrating in the academic culture has been extremely easy. And I think also when it comes to I think just everyday life and activities, there's so much happening in Gothenburg, and even free events, that I think it's kind of easy to find every day something to do. And I think that has been really great.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's also something that we say or talk about a lot, is that Gothenburg, for like it's for international standards perhaps not the biggest city, but it's quite a big city in Scandinavia, and it has quite an international feel to it also, for example, due to lots of international students being there. It's very easy to speak English in Sweden, and Swedes are very good at English, even though of course also everyone is very like encouraged to learn Swedish, and that will always help you if you plan to be here long term. But that's something that also like enriches the ease of arriving here, and the offers that you can sort of like partake in when coming here. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Maybe to just round up with our panel, maybe just want to ask you what do you think, how has studying abroad changed you now that you've been in Sweden for quite a while? What has been something that you noticed, oh, I'm different now?
For me, I think I actually became more extroverted than I used to be. I would say that I was kind of introverted and extroverted, or I needed my alone time to get my energy again after hanging out. But something about going abroad and having to make friends completely from scratch. In high school, you kind of grow up with people, and so you don't even remember when you became friends with them. But when you move to university and go abroad, and now this is the second country that I've lived in abroad, when you make friends with someone and they actually want to hang out with you, it gives you this sense of confidence of, oh, they actually like me and they want to be around me. And it really, I think, is very self-reassuring. It gives you really good self-esteem and a sense of independence of, these are friends that I've made. This is the life that I've built. And yeah, I think the main difference is that I can feel quite comfortable in social settings as well as in professional networking sessions, because it's very humbling when you go up to someone and say, hey, do you want to be my friend? Do you want to hang out? And then they actually say yes. You can advocate for yourself a lot better after being abroad for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Like studying abroad gives you a huge boost in confidence and maybe agency to manage different situations in your life, for sure. And I don't know if Ark or Hamanot, if you perhaps have also any other thoughts about how you feel you have changed through studying abroad, or if you have any other further pieces of advice that you want to give our new students before arriving.
I guess the only advice I would say, start your Duolingo lessons now. If you are looking for a sign to start your lessons, start them now. Swedish is very important. You'll see that when you come here. In the tram, they only do announcements in Swedish. It's very good practice. So yeah, if you're looking for a sign, start your Duolingo lessons now. That's all I'm gonna say.
So, we have reached the end of our webinar. So it's time to wrap up for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Once again, congratulations on your admission to the university. We really hope to see you again soon, either at our webinars, at our Zoom sessions, or in the autumn when you come to Gothenburg and start your studies. So goodbye and take care.
Welcome everyone. The mine is